The first of two Monday night games in Week 6, it's the Buffalo Bills versus the Atlanta Falcons. The last time these two teams played each other was back in 2022. The last time the Falcons beat the Bills was in Canada at the Rogers Center in 2013. Can the Falcons get their win at home, or will the Bills make it 3 in a row? We'll see in the simulation, but first, let's get behind the bar and make our drink birdberries. All right, Bills versus Falcons, two teams well accustomed to the primetime limelight. This is the fourth game for the Bills, and while it is technically only the second one for the Falcons, they've got one next week and then 3 more after that, so they're certainly not lacking for opportunities. I'm incredibly thankful that Buffalo doesn't have another primetime game until week 12, because I've exhausted basically all of my drinks for them, so I had to hop on Amazon and grab something that was mentioned but missing from a previous episode: Loganberry Syrup. Yes, Loganberry Syrup. If you remember back in the week 3 matchup, I mentioned that I wasn't able to get Loganberry liqueur, and I still don't have Loganberry liqueur, but at least I've got this: PJ's Crystal Beach Loganberry Syrup. As a brief refresher, Loganberries are a cross between the North American blackberry and the European raspberry, and despite originating in Santa Cruz, they really caught on in the upstate New York, Buffalo region. Mainly as a beverage flavoring, Loganberry Syrup actually outsold Coke in that region one year. As far as I can tell, really the only brand that sells Loganberry Syrup is this PJ's Crystal Beach. Now, despite being named after the now closed Crystal Beach Park, which is actually across the border in Ontario, this brand originated in Sarasota Springs, New York, which is way over by Albany. If anything, I think that really just goes to show how much of an upstate New York thing this is, which makes it an excellent representative for Buffalo. For the Falcons, we again turn to a local fruit, this time the true symbol of Georgia, the peach. And actually, we're going to make it even more southern by turning this into a bourbon peach iced tea as Atlanta's representative in this matchup. Now, I've covered a lot of drinks before in this series, but I don't think I've ever covered one quite like the bourbon peach iced tea. It's a drink with no clearly defined recipe, but still a very strong identity, right? Drinks that I've covered, like the Packers Punch, which had a bunch of different recipes, all had different recipes because nobody could agree on what a damn Packers Punch is. Meanwhile, with drinks like a Long Island or a margarita, right, very strong identity, but they also have very sort of well-established standard recipes. People might put spins on them, but there's still a very solid template that you have to follow. With a bourbon peach iced tea, as long as you have bourbon, iced tea, and peaches in some form, you can pass it off as a bourbon peach iced tea. Now, as I alluded to, the nature of the peach is really one of the main differences across everybody's recipes. Some call for a homemade peach syrup, others call for peach liqueur. I've seen some that try to cut corners by using peach black tea bags. Since I didn't have any good peaches for this episode, I decided to go with peach liqueur, or as you may know it from college, peach schnapps. If you're wondering what the difference is between peach schnapps and a classier peach liqueur, like creme de pêche, the answer is marketing. There might be some subtle, flavor or textural differences between them, but ultimately they are both sweetened peach-flavored alcohols. Technically, there are some differences if you're using the European definition of schnapps, but in this case, I'm referring to what you're going to find in most US liquor stores, this De Kuyper brand peach tree liqueur. Now, in creating this drink, the bourbon peach iced tea is flexible enough that I definitely could have just thrown in some Loganberry syrup and called it a day, but that feels like cheating and is also kind of boring. So instead, I decided to do some addition by subtraction, removing the iced tea, and instead turning this more into a traditional cocktail, which I'm going to serve up in this coupe glass. So, as a result, the spec for this drink is going to be 2 ounces of bourbon. You know we got to stick with that Buffalo Trace anytime we're doing a Bills game. Been putting the hurt on this bottle, that's for sure. Woo. Then 1/2 ounce of our peach schnapps. Should be just enough to sort of modify this a little bit, add that peach flavor. I can smell that peach flavor, that's for sure. Whew. That is peach gummies right there. That is straight up those little peach gummies. 1/2 ounce of our Loganberry syrup. And yes, this is the smallest bottle of Loganberry syrup I was able to get. Such is the nature of ordering things off Amazon. and not being able to actually pick them up in the stores. Half an ounce of that Loganberry Syrup. A little extra sweetness to this drink. It's got a really interesting scent to it. It does smell like a cross between blackberries and raspberries. And then finally, half an ounce of lemon juice. A little bit of acidity to cut all that sweetness. All right. Then we're gonna shake this all up. All right. And then strain that into our coupe glass. Woo, very pretty color. A fitting color for both of these teams as well. All right. And here we have our bird berries. Let's give it a try. Woo! That artificial peach flavor definitely comes through. You can tell. I would not recommend making this if you have any sort of bad memories associated with peach schnapps, because you do taste the peach. It comes through. It's not overpowering though. It is certainly, there's only half an ounce of it in this drink, but it is a present undercurrent that runs through it, and it's definitely there. It plays with the Loganberry and the lemon juice in a very interesting way. They almost wash each other out. It's quite strange. It's quite a strange interaction. And the bourbon absolutely just gets buried in here. Buried. But very few notes of the bourbon are able to sort of make it through the intensity of that, Loganberry syrup and the peach schnapps and, the lemon juice to a lesser extent. But those two sort of sweeteners in this drink really do dominate the palate. I mean, ultimately, it is quite easy to drink, though. It's still got some real bite to it. You can sort of feel the alcohol when you take a sip of it. It's not, being buried under it. If you think of, we only have an ounce that isn't alcohol in this drink. So there's still, a pretty high ABV in this drink. But there's an equally high sugar content that's sort of offsetting it flavor-wise. Ultimately, it's fine. I think, it'd be interesting to see if using a better peach liqueur would yield better results in this drink. I think because there are so few ingredients, the combination of, this Loganberry syrup, which is naturally going to be a bit, it's a syrup, it's going to be a bit cloying, it's going to be a bit sweet. But then combined with, this sort of hyper artificial, very sweet peach liqueur, it does just create a sort of almost tacky drink, where it feels, this feels like a drink that you would get at like an Applebee's or like a TGI Fridays, where it's like it is designed to be sort of served over like a lot of ice and just kind of dilute itself down because there's a lot of sugar in there. I think the difference is that there's also a lot of alcohol in here, whereas I think those drinks are sort of, watered down from the start. It was certainly an interesting drink and not a bad one. And hopefully this is not a bad matchup, but we will find out in the simulation. Now, despite getting the ball first, the Falcons would proceed to do literally nothing with it, going 3 and out and punting it right back to the Bills. The Bills would then take it all the way down to the 12-yard line, but Josh overthrows a wide-open Keon Coleman on 3rd down, which forces Buffalo to settle for the chip shot field goal, putting the first points on the board. Now, the Falcons do make it farther on their next drive, crossing midfield, but on 3rd and 2, Greg Rousseau strip sacks Penix, and Buffalo recovers the ball at their 43-yard line. Despite that excellent field position, they were unable to even make it to field goal range and just punt it right back. After a quiet first quarter, the Falcons' offense finally finds the gas pedal in the second, as Penix scrambles right up the middle for the game's first touchdown. However, the Bills answer right back on their possession as James Cook scoots right on in from the 2-yard line to retake the lead for Buffalo. After getting the ball back with just under 2 minutes left in the half, Josh immediately throws an interception, targeting a double-covered Dalton Kincaid, giving the Falcons the ball with excellent field position. Thankfully for the Bills, their defense comes up with a big third down sack to back the Falcons up to the 19 and force them to settle for a field goal, sending us into the half tied at 10 apiece. After starting off the second half just trading some punts back and forth, the Falcons strike first as Bijan gets excellent blocking and takes it in from 11 yards out. Buffalo again answers right back, as this time on play action, Josh doesn't miss Keon Coleman, connecting for the 2-yard touchdown at the end of the third quarter. The Falcons make it back to the red zone halfway through the fourth quarter, but pressure gets to Penix and he's unable to complete, resulting in Atlanta settling for another 3 points. The Bills' offense is unable to make anything happen, but at least their defense is able to conjure another third down stop to keep Atlanta out of the end zone and keep this a one-score game. With a 6-point deficit and prime game-winning drive opportunity, the Bills make it all the way to the 14-yard line, but for the second time in a row, we see a very winnable game choked away by the Madden AI's inept clock management. Falcons win 23-17. Well, honestly, I still don't really know what to think about this Falcons team, but I can at least say I don't think they're better than the Bills. Obviously, anything can happen on any given Sunday, but I think this is another case of Madden's Bills slander, especially considering the only reason they didn't finish that game-winning drive is because the Madden AI is unfamiliar with the very concept of time. Two very reasonable quarterback performances in this game, with Josh Allen kind of doing it all and Penix not doing much of anything. 227 yards is right around where Josh has been averaging this year. He hasn't really been having to sling it a whole lot in these early matchups. Meanwhile, Michael Penix just had less of everything. Less yards, lower completion percentage, less touchdowns, but also less interceptions. He's been very boom or bust so far this season, with this definitely looking more like a bust game. This game was really dominated by the running backs, who have been both having good years so far and continued to put up numbers in the sim. Bijan led the way with 107 yards and a touchdown on 15 carries, but James Cook put up a very nice 78 yards on only 9 carries, finding the end zone as well for good measure. As for the quarterbacks though, it looks like Madden got Penix and Allen confused. Michael Penix has never rushed for more than 21 yards, yet he somehow put up 63 yards and a touchdown in this game? In contrast, Josh Allen has already had a 59-yard rushing game this season, yet he only rushed twice for a measly 8 yards. No other way to slice it, Madden was tripping. A bit of a surprise over in the receiving department, as it's Dalton Kincaid pacing all other pass catchers in receptions and yards, racking up 102 on 7 catches. Now he has been having a good year so far, finding the end zone in 3 of their first 4 games, but this is basically 2 games worth of volume. Keon Coleman also sits near the top of the stat sheet, which is always nice to see as a Michigan State fan. For Atlanta, Drake London and Darnell Mooney are twinning, both putting up exactly 57 yards on 4 catches. At the bottom of the stat sheet, we see a scattered bunch of names, but notably down here is someone who has been having a real rebound season, Kyle Pitts. He's cleared at least 4 catches in all games so far this season, so 1 catch for 16 yards would be a real step back for him. This is one of those games where, at least on the stat perspective, Madden and the Monte Carlo sim largely agree, with a few notable outliers. Obviously, Penix sees his rushing yards drop all the way down to about 15, which is far more reasonable. Bijan and Dalton Kincaid both see lower averages compared to their Madden performances, but still very healthy games for both of them. Honestly, the big change is the Monte Carlo sim favoring Khalil Shakir over Keon Coleman. Though with his Buffalo offense, it really is anybody's guess who's going to have the big game from week to week. As for the final score, the Monte Carlo sim really doesn't give the edge to either of these teams, but it sees it as being an offensive shootout, with the most common score being a 21-21 tie. As an example of how evenly matched the sim sees these two teams, the second most likely score after a 21 tie are a 21-14 Bills victory and a 21-14 Falcons victory. Indeed, the scores are essentially perfectly distributed around that mode, with the average final score being a 21-21 tie. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the sweet and peachy bird berries. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.